Welcome to the Alcohol Addiction Podcast. I am your host, Lee Davey, and my special guest today is Judy Voruz. Is it Voruz? Is that the right way to say it?
No, it's Voruz.
Voruz. Oh,
Yeah, don't pronounce the Z.
That sounds very French.
It is.
It is French, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, now you've been working in the addiction field since 1985.
Yes.
Which means I was 10 when you started out. Just beginning my life.
Don't remind me.
So I'm just about starting to formulate my ideas about the world, and I'll get influenced by the alcohol and stuff. I'm curious, what has changed over what we're looking at now, 3 decades? What has changed for you? Or is it always been the same old thing, but people just don't get the simplicity of it? What do you think?
So you're asking me what has changed in terms of our understanding?
Yeah. I mean, our understanding and the way that we're treating addiction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that one of the main things that's changed in my understanding of treatment is that I guess addiction isn't really the problem. When we look at someone who has an addiction, what happens is we almost exclusively focus on the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, doesn't mean that behavior isn't happening. It is happening. But what's much more interesting and also has the potential to actually change people's behavior is what's happening at the causal level. What's really going on in that person that would have them reach for a substance. And there's ways of looking at that, and most recently, I think, at least in treatment, is neuroscience.
Right.
So they look at, okay, what's happening in the brain. And I think that's useful. It isn't that it's not useful, but again, it's looking at, it's objectifying it and saying, okay, because this is happening in the brain, that's what's really causing the addiction. And that's, in my understanding, that's just not true. Yes, it's what's going on in the body. It's what's going on in the brain. But there's something prior to that, which is our thoughts. So, for instance, when an addict has a craving, that craving is literally created by thought in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, if you don't see that, if you think that, okay, I'm having this feeling or this mood or this state, and I don't like it, and I want to get away from it, the strategy is to reach for a substance. But if you actually woke up to the fact that it was your thinking in the moment that was creating the feeling or the sensation in the body or whatever you want to call it, you could then see that, oh, I'm actually not this feeling. It's being created by thought. And I actually have a choice about whether or not I follow or engage with or pay attention to that thought or those thoughts. And so it first of all, alert, am not a victim of this experience. I actually can choose something here that will calm me down, take those thoughts off my mind, and return me to a place of, I would say, really a place of calm, a place of wisdom, a place of clarity. And from that place, you start to see everything differently. You see that you have a lot more options. You can also start to see that even logically, it doesn't really make sense for me to keep repeating that same behavior. And really you start to see that, well, I don't actually want to do that because of the impact that it has on me, the impact that it has on other people. So you touch with this place of, I would say, a deeper seeing of what's happening.
So let me just recap that a little bit. What you're saying is people need to be aware that it's your thoughts that are creating your feelings. Yes. And somewhere in between thought and feeling is a choice we're making, and that choice will turn that thought into one of many different feelings, I guess.
Yes.
So if we choose to grab hold of that thought and run with it and believe that it's real and that we created it, then that could lead us down a rabbit hole of negativity and reaching for the beer. Or we can say to ourselves, okay, I don't know where these thoughts come from. They just float around in my head. It's not really me creating them. So I'm just going to let that one kind of float by.
Drift on by.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go by, and I'm going to choose to ignore it and focus on doing the work and meditation and looking at the wonderful trees outside, whatever it is to take. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I guess the question I have then is that for me, in my learned, my education, that kind of philosophy goes way, 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 way back to probably like the Stoics. Why are we here in 2017 arguing about whether it's a brain disease, whether it's this, whether it's that, when the Stoics got it right all the way back, God knows when? Why can't we just accept this, get it, fix it, move on? Why is something so simple so difficult?
Well, I think mainly because all of Western society has been conditioned in a materialistic view of the universe. And cause and effect, right? In other words, if I hit my finger or slam my finger in a door, I'm going to have pain, right? Maybe that's not the best example, but the thing is that we've been trained to look to the outside circumstance for the reason that we're experiencing whatever we're experiencing.
So an example would be, I've just had an argument with my wife, and I'm externalizing, and I'm saying in my mind that she is to blame here. She is responsible for my pain when she's not, and it's impossible for her to cause me any pain other than physical pain. I'm creating it myself, and I need to realize, hang on a minute, I have control here, not this other person.
Well, and also I think that that's a really good example because your wife is outside of you.
Yeah.
She's a being, she's a person, she's a physical being outside of you. And there isn't any way that she can transmit to you your experience. It isn't like there's a radio frequency or something that's being transmitted to you. And that's she's transmitting blame to you, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, that's just not possible. Another great example is if I see a car accident and I have a reaction, it scares me, right? But the accident itself isn't broadcasting fear to me. That's getting created right here. And the way that we look at it is, it's that thing that's actually somehow creating the experience.
Okay, so if we're in a relationship with a verbally abusive person, and you perceive that they're making your life a living hell because they're shouting at you, they're putting you down, they've got no respect for you, etc., etc. As difficult as this might sound for people listening in, it could be screaming in your face, and it's not him that's creating the pain, it's you that's creating the pain. Now, if you're listening to this, that might be really difficult to accept. And this is what I love about 100% responsibility and trying to take 100% responsibility of your life. And I guess one of the most difficult aspects of this in addiction, Judy, is early trauma, right? So let's say someone's had a very traumatic experience when they're younger and they don't effectively deal with that trauma. And then as they go through life, they turn to drugs and alcohol. And as you're working with them, they don't want to let go of this trauma. It's like they can't cope because of the trauma, but the traumatic event might have happened 20, 30 years ago. And as painful and as raw as it might feel, it physically doesn't exist. It's being created because of your association.
Right. But not only that, it's who knows what the person thought at the moment the trauma was happening. We don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, let's say, they developed a whole set of thoughts about that trauma that they've carried forward through time. And so then they're still living. They're still in their thoughts, they're still living their experience of that. Even though the trauma is not happening now. Mm-hmm. Trauma's long past, as you said. But they are still experiencing the thought about the trauma in the moment. They're still experiencing the feelings in the moment because of that, whatever set of thoughts they still are running through their mind or are being run through their mind. Mm. Who knows? We don't even know. It's like, because we can't really say where our thinking is coming from. And I often say to clients, well, do you choose your negative thoughts? In other words, do I sit here and I go, oh, I think I'm going to have a depressing thought now? We don't do that.
No.
So for me, that's a really good example of, this thought comes through. I don't know where it comes from. It could come from anywhere. But really, for me, that's a substantiation of, it's not personal. It's a thought. And that gives me even more possibility to go, you know what, I don't want to even follow that. I don't want that thought. So I'm just going to let that just go right on by.
And you mentioned materialistic conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we've all been taught that. I know I was. That if someone or something is happening in the outside, I'm looking at it, I'm experiencing it, that is what is actually creating my experience, the outside. Mm-hmm. So if I look outside at a tree and I think, oh God, what a beautiful tree that is, I'm creating that sense of beauty. It's called getting created inside of me. Mm-hmm. Through my thought about, wow, that's a beautiful tree. That's a beautiful sky. So that's just the way that we've learned to relate, I guess you would say, to our experience. Is in that way. That's the way we've been conditioned. That's what we've been taught. And so that's the way we see it. And I really see this new understanding. It's as evolution in action, because this is a shift in our understanding of human psychological functioning.
Yeah, I'm thinking here as you're talking to me, you're talking about evolution in action.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to what you're saying here, and I'm thinking back to when I was a kid growing up, and there are many ways that society conditioned me to become the man I was. And I strongly believe that alcoholism in itself is a belief system that allows me to believe that it is normal and pleasurable, therefore I could easily drink. So, but what I know didn't happen is nobody taught me that when I look at a tree and I think, wow, that's beautiful, which incidentally, I only started doing after I stopped drinking alcohol, because before that I never even noticed the bloody tree. Nobody taught me that. It was just a subconscious, biological, normal, psychological reaction. It just happened. Like I've got an 8-month-old, and I'm watching her learn to sit upright, and I notice that she crawls backwards to sit up. And I know she's not thinking that, it's just happening. So when you say, so that to me is just, when you say evolution in action, yeah, I get that, because now if we are now being more aware, so Three Principles, Sydney Banks, everything that's gone after that, and practitioners such as yourself, raising awareness. And now that we're raising awareness, now we can go, oh, right, now I can change my thinking. But I'm going to ask you a question, and it might be a difficult question. Why weren't we programmed by evolution to be like that in the first place?
Oh my God!
But we should be, shouldn't we? It's almost like it's a protection mechanism.
Well, I think we were programmed.
Right.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think we were programmed. We're already programmed. In other words, we all have within us natural clarity, natural wisdom, natural creativity. That's in us. Those are human qualities. They've always been there. Have we learned to put our attention somewhere else? Yes, we have.
Okay, I understand. So you're saying if we were like the movie Blue Lagoon, and we were both raised on an island with no other inhabitants, no telly, no radio, no Facebook, no Twitter, we would probably grow up thinking very differently than what people think in modern society in the Western culture.
Well, yeah, and we would still have those human qualities because we're human.
Yeah.
We would have the qualities of resilience, of creativity, of wisdom, of foresight, of all these of love, of compassion. I mean, all these wonderful human qualities. I mean, really, what we're talking about here is, I feel like we're starting to. I don't know whether the right word is reacquaint ourselves with our humanity, but it feels like it. It feels like we are starting to wake up again because, like you said, this is not new.
Do you know what
this was something the Greeks realized a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we forgot, but it never went away. And we've been reminded of it over and over again through various spiritual traditions. But now it's coming out, I think, in a more in a more widespread way.
Mm.
And it's coming out through the field of psychology.
Yeah.
Which for many, many years also pointed us in the wrong direction because they focused on the problem.
Mm.
And the way I work with families is that one of the first things we talk about is the fact that the addict isn't broken. It isn't a problem. Well, you could say it isn't a problem as you're seeing it. The problem is that that person, just like you, is caught in a pattern of thinking that is creating them, is creating that movement, that it's like that sense of, oh, I gotta reach for that, without knowing that that's being created by thought. And that there is a choice. And just like the family member who's totally focused on the addict and all of their thoughts about that, they can't possibly see that person clearly when they don't understand that they're caught in the same process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no different. It's a parallel reality, really, because they're both caught in their own negative thinking.
Okay. I think going back to your point on this change that's happening more prevalently lately, and particularly in psychology. And it's interesting you said that psychology was looking in the wrong place. I interviewed David Burns, the author of Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy, a while ago, and David Burns said, probably everything I do now is wrong, and it's going to be proved wrong in the future.
Sure,
But this is what I know now, you know.
That's it.
Yeah, I think what has happened is the internet has happened. So that enables people like yourself and me who would never have met normally, because I'm in Cardiff. Where are you based, Judy?
I'm in Ashland, Oregon, Southern Oregon.
So so we probably would never have met, and here we are able to do this because of the internet. So the internet gets blamed for a lot of negative, bad things, but it's such a powerful connector of human energy around the world. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, I want to go back to my first relationship, my first marriage, where I'm getting to the point where we're arguing all the time. We have a child at the time, 8, 9, 10 years of age. And I can see that the times that we are arguing is when we're drunk, both drunk, or one or the other is drunk. And I started to see that my ex-wife had a huge drinking problem, whilst conveniently ignoring my own huge drinking problem. Yeah. I transmitted all the blame over to her and said that if she quit drinking, we would be okay. And she wouldn't. So I quit. Now, she didn't quit. I found that period of time where I was sober and she was drunk, some of the most frustrating times I've ever experienced. I was always raised never to be violent towards women. My dad always said I could never ever hit a woman, quite rightly. And I would get so angry that I would have to punch walls, just get that sheer frustration out of me, because I couldn't handle somebody in my face who is someone I love, who is not there right now. They're off to La La Land, and some drunk person I don't like has jumped in. And I didn't have this insight of thinking, feeling, contaminated thinking, free principles. None of that, Judy. And I just couldn't communicate with her. I just couldn't figure it out. And it ended up in divorce. And I bet there are loads of people listening to this right now who have quit drinking alcohol, mainly women, and then men are not quitting drinking, and they've got the same problem in front of them. and they really don't know what to do. Where on earth do people start with this?
Well, I mean, I feel like people that are in that situation, first of all, they need outside help because they're so focused in on what's happening in the relationship, and there's so much in the at the effect of thought creating feeling in the moment, and they would have you have to step away. You have to get some kind of other perspective on what's happening. And if you're just in it and you just keep doing the same thing over and over, of course, nothing's probably going to change. So I would say, number one, you have to get some help with that, because you're convinced that both of you were convinced that the problem was the other person. Well, how did that work out? Did it change anything in your experience? What did it change anything?
No, it just created blame, which then created defense, which then created more angst and anger.
Right.
And I'm remarried now. My wife doesn't drink that much, hardly anything. So our arguments and not over alcohol, but we'll still argue occasionally. And I still find it really difficult in the moment to catch myself and to just change my communicative style. It's always hindsight. I'm getting a little bit better, but we'll argue, I'll upset her, and then I'll go back and apologize and say, let's try that again.
Sure.
But back then, when I had no communication skills, because of course they're not really taught in school. My parents didn't teach me how to communicate. Then people think communicating is what we're doing now, just talking. That's not communicating. And I often say to people when they say to me, Lee, help me quit drinking. I'm like, okay, let's learn how to communicate because that will help you a tremendous amount. But yeah, going back to what you said, nothing. By continuing doing what I was doing, which was blaming her for everything, I just really made her feel super disrespected, not seen, not heard, like I was trying to change her all the time. And if I put myself in her shoes, that must have been a horrible relationship to be in. And she's not going to then react in kind, loving way.
Right. Well, and if you could have seen that the relationship you were having wasn't with her, but with the thought, whatever the thought process was in your mind. And because that was the case, you were continually having the same reactions, the same feelings. If you had seen that might have caused you to pause for a minute and go, oh, I actually see something that's happening here that I didn't see before. And in fact, my wife isn't the cause, her drinking isn't the cause of my feelings. My feelings are coming from my thinking in the moment. That, in and of itself, causes a person to pause. And that's what happens when I work with people, is that when they start to see that, they actually stop for a minute and go, oh, wow, I see. I'm caught in my thinking. And I have a choice. I know that I have a choice. I can follow that thinking, or I can let all of that settle and see what response is there. when I've taken that thinking off my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what naturally comes forth is more ideas, more solutions, more possibilities. Our creativity comes online.
I guess what comes up for me there is, first and foremost, I would never have had those realizations on my own. I would have definitely needed outside help, either through reading something myself and then a light bulb going on, or
Right.
doing work with someone like yourself.
Yes.
And that in itself is difficult, because back in the day, I probably would have just grabbed the nearest counsellor who was nearest to my house, that was the cheapest one to get, and probably wouldn't have got anywhere, because they wouldn't have been skilled enough to help us out. Because we did actually go to therapy once, and it was an absolute disaster. So that's important, I guess, and that's why this podcast is wonderful, because people can listen to this. Yes. and they can get making more informed choice. So let's say that I was fortunate enough to read something that you had written or do some work with you, and I realized that my thoughts are creating my feelings, and I do have a choice here, and it's not the addiction, and it's not her behavior, it's me. I guess what I still can't wrap my head around it is, let's say I had got that, what would have changed? Well, I would have had more empathy. Therefore, I would have been able to communicate with her more at her level, and not with an agenda or conflict attached to it. And that may have resulted in her changing her behavior, but I don't think it would have, because she really, really, really liked to drink and really, really liked to get drunk. Mm-hmm. So even though she's gone out on a Saturday night, I've gone to pick her up, I'm waiting outside the pub, she comes crashing out of there, falling over. I feel shame, embarrassment, but I tell myself it's my own thinking. I get her in the car, she starts abusing me. I'm telling myself, well, it's my own thinking, but it's still happening. It's still in my face, and I'm really, really difficult. There must be more. Like, I can't see how I can just, in that instance, I would find it really difficult to remain in that relationship. I think. No, I know I would.
I also think that part of what happens is that you get much more connected to what's true for you. As this understanding grows in you, you get much clearer about what's true for you.
Right.
And that includes, okay, are there certain ways that I need to limit my exposure to this behavior? Do I need to, when the person isn't drunk, have a talk with them from a clear place, mm-hmm. And really talk with them about, okay, this is the impact that the behavior has on me. And also, I think it's important to share with them your understanding of what you feel is happening. And the conversation for me needs to be a collaboration. Again, you don't want to do this when the person's drunk, right? Because what you'll get in that case is drunk thinking, which is not usually very helpful. And so a lot of it has to do with approaching them with clarity, but also love and compassion, because it's clear. Anybody that's seen somebody who can't stop drinking or who's drunk a lot, they're suffering. They're really caught because they think this is the way to handle whatever's going on inside of them.
Yeah, you just got me thinking that my ex-wife and me grew up in a small valley of 3,000 people. The belief system around alcoholism and its normalcy and its pleasure and everything about it being acceptable was very prevalent when we grew up. So we were both always going to drink, and we was both always going to drink excessively because that's what people do where I used to live. However, when it started to go too far, I'm starting to think now that she was probably pushed that way because of my behavior. So it's almost like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
I'm complaining that she's drinking and I'm not respecting her. I want to change her. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed. And then she then, in reaction to not being loved and not feeling connected, just finds solace in drinking, which then spins it round again. And I guess what I'm thinking here is, you're right. It really does have to come from a place of love and compassion. So if you're in a relationship like this, you really need to learn the skills of navigating yourself around conflict so you can take yourself away from that and somehow find love, empathy, and compassion for the person that you're with. And I guess the other thing that's really important, Judy, and I'll ask you your opinion in a second, is we need to really be patient, because I can imagine men, through my own worldview here, of a man listening to this and going home, finding love, compassion, and empathy in a situation with their wife, trying it once, it doesn't work because they're thinking, is this, what is this guy on about? Like, is he talking down to me? Is he being sarcastic? And then they give up. Well, of course, I guess you've got to win back that respect and win back that trust. And you've got to continually keep behaving in this way until you see a counter reaction, right? It's not just going to happen straight away.
But it all comes, the thing that I think the piece that's missing is that this has to do with with each person having a deeper understanding of how the power of thought works. Because it isn't about changing the behavior, either in yourself or the other person. It's about having more clarity. And the way that you have more clarity is by seeing how this understanding works.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you're grounded in that, the more you're naturally going to come from a place of compassion. More naturally, you're going to come from a place of clarity. And it's in the seeing of how this works that actually allows you to do that.
Okay, so let me just jump in there then, so I can wrap my head around this and not just for myself, but for people listening, because I know.
Yeah.
Let's make this really polarized then. Let's just say that at the very essence of what it is to be human is love and compassion. Yes. And we've moved away from that. And we are no longer there as naturally as we should be because of this materialistic conditioning. When we learn these principles and understand that our thought is creating our feeling, and we get clarity around that, and this isn't easy because obviously I'm still struggling with it, and we get real clarity around that.
Oh my!
We
right.
we don't have to try. We don't have to learn. We don't have to pick up a book. What you're saying is we will naturally just be who we are being created to be, which is that loving, compassionate, and we will just emanate that love and compassion automatically, and then anyone around your field or your sphere of influence will react positively or whatever the hell they like. But the odds are they're going to react positively to your positive energy in the same way they've been reacting negatively to your negative energy. I'm getting it now.
Yeah. And I want to say that you're always going to fall in and out of this understanding.
Right.
As a human being. In other words, you're never going to be in it 100% of the time. But as you really in this process begin to have a deeper understanding that your feelings are created by thought in the moment. In other words, they're inside out, not outside in. In other words, our feelings are not coming from outside of us. They're coming from inside of us. And as that understanding grows, we have all those beautiful human qualities, which are always there, just naturally arise. Because so much has been taken off of our minds.
Is this the classic battle between consciousness and who we were millions of years ago before consciousness existed? So like there's a great book by Jeremy Griffith called Freedom. He talks about the human condition, about how at the essence of being human, we are loving, caring, and compassionate. But when we reach a certain age, which he says around the teenage years, the world is telling us that we shouldn't be behaving the way that we naturally feel we should behave.
Yeah.
That we need to wear a mask, that we need to fit in, that we can't be truthful, that we can't be authentic because it's not cool, it's not trendy, we won't have any friends. So we start to try to be like everybody wants us to be, and that goes at odds as to how we're naturally supposed to be. So this battle is always going on in our minds, which manifests itself in you've heard this a million times, I certainly have, is I never felt like I fitted in when I was in school. And that is why I drink alcohol. And do you know what, Judy? I'm going to say this, and I'll say this a million times, and I'm going to stand by this, and I don't care how many scientists tell me otherwise. I believe 7.3 billion people on this planet have all felt at one point or another that they didn't fit in. I really do. I just think...
I totally agree with you. What I would call that is insecure thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Pure and simple, right?
But I do. I think everybody thinks it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they deal with it differently. Some people bury it and refuse to acknowledge that they ever felt different. The cool kids. And then the ones who are not afraid to be vulnerable talk about it and as it is. And they're the shining lights. They're the ones who... So funny how we get this world backwards, Judy, that you grow up thinking that the cool kids are the cool kids, when it's not. It's the calm, quiet, deep thinkers who we really need to pay attention to.
Well, and imagine if you saw through that, really. Imagine if you saw through that as a teenager. Oh, this is a thought. This has no independent reality. How would that change your experience? It's huge.
It is. It's huge. But if I didn't have a support system around me whilst I was getting it, I don't think I would be strong enough to change. I would sacrifice the knowledge for friendship.
Right. Well, the truth is we sacrifice the knowledge all the time. We go in and out of this. I don't even know how many times a day we go in and out of this, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. I think that the more you're exposed to this, the more that you're in community with people that are learning this and, growing in this understanding, that helps it to grow in you. Mm-hmm. And, we've also gotten out of this whole notion that, hey, we need community. We are community beings. That's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We like connectedness is so important.
Yeah.
And you hear people talk about it all the time. We're connected.
I was really tired until I come on this podcast, and now I'm full of energy. And when I finish, I'll be raring to go. And and it's not just the podcast. It's finding like-minded people that suddenly you can feel free to be yourself with.
Right.
And not be ashamed or embarrassed or feel like you have to wear a mask. And, I had someone the other day, part of a community forum of mine, is doing some really good work, Judy, really is shining. It's beautiful to see. And a friend noticed the change and said, wow, what have you done? Tell me where you got help from.
Yeah.
And in that moment, she paused, and she didn't want to tell her friend where she got the help from, because by doing so, she has to open up to a friend about the fact that she had a problem, about why she had a problem. Her friend would then come and work with me and would see remnants of her friend's vulnerability. And then when we had a conversation about that, it was just to understand that that's natural to feel like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the journey here in my business and what I want to try to evoke in people is to get back to that place where we accept ourselves so we can then garner acceptance from other people. Because how can you get acceptance from someone if you're not who you are? If you're not, you know what I mean? It's like, it's such a lot of energy to be someone different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it reminds me, do you know what it reminds me of, Judy? A superhero, like an X, you know, the X-Men?
Yeah.
It reminds me of an X-Man who can turn into something else, but to do so, they have to apply tremendous energy. Mm. And when they go back to who they are, they're like exhausted because they've applied all that energy to be different. And I think that's how we exist. We're just exhausted all the time trying to be fake.
Yeah. And I would say that your example of acceptance, if we accept ourselves, we'll garner acceptance from others. I feel like I could almost say acceptance is not the issue.
Right.
Because once we, again, deepen in this understanding of what's really creating our experience, where our experience is coming from, we have a natural sense of well-being. We have a natural sense of wholeness in us that just comes forward. It's just there. And so then it's no longer even really a question of acceptance. It's like we start living from that place. And people feel that, and people are affected by that. They feel that energy, they feel that wholeness, that naturalness. And there's a resonance there between us. It's like right now I feel this, I feel our connection. Yeah. And I feel that sense of wholeness in each of us.
Yeah. And I say that to people who they quit drinking alcohol and all of a sudden they get very lonely. I did anyway. Like even today, Judy, I was listening to a podcast today and I was running and I nearly burst into tears because I feel so invisible. Let me get this right. There are very, very few, if any, people in the world who understands me, who I am, because I've carried this mask for so long that people believe that is me, and that's not me. And I'm just desperate to be seen for who I am. But my own mother, who gave birth to me on her own when she was 18 years of age, with nobody holding her hand, still does not know who I am. There are times when my wife doesn't know who I am. My 16-year-old son doesn't know who I am. And it's really sad and lonely to feel like that. And I know I'm creating the feelings through my thoughts in that aspect. So it's really important for me to not just be authentic, but to go out into the world and to find an energy which I resonate with. So I can start to turn that around and populate my life with people who do see me. And I'm not doing a good enough job of that. That's one of the things I've got to do. But I don't walk the walk, but I do tell people, look, there are 7.3 billion people in this world. There's going to be plenty out there that will be on your wavelength. You just got to go out and find them, because you're not going to find them sitting on your ass in the house moping and groaning about life, you know?
Well, it's very clear to me that, I mean, I see who you are, and that you have tremendous caring, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. And that's just true. And that's never going to change, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel it's important to be in community with people that are resonating, right? Together in that understanding. I know it's really important for me, because all I want is to deepen in this understanding, so that I can transmit that sense of wholeness and that sense of love.
Yeah.
You know, and that you're not broken. There's not really a problem here. The only thing that's happening is that you're thinking that your experience is coming from someplace that it's not. And I can't tell you how much I've changed as a result of this understanding. I'm somebody that, you know, lifelong depression. And I feel like I'm kind of finally coming above the clouds, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I just want to share this, and I want to share it with people that I know can really benefit. Everybody can benefit, but my particular bailiwick is addictions, because that's where I've worked most of my life.
Yeah.
And it's as true about addiction as it is true about anything else.
Yeah. I think it's really important to impress for people listening that when people quit alcohol, I'm going to focus on alcohol right here.
Yeah.
They often expected this wonderful thing to happen. And it does eventually, but it doesn't manifest itself in the way that some people think it will. One of the things that happens is, like we just talked about, you start to lose people, friends, family, whatever. And you think it's because there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that you're a bad person now you stop drinking. And it's really important to understand that what is happening is you're seeing truths, you're seeing the world for the first time, and you're suddenly realizing that these people are not on your wavelength, they're not on your frequency, they just aren't able to see you right now. But you're not bad, you're not broken, you're perfectly okay. It's just you've changed for the better, and you've just got to just be a little bit patient with that. What I say, do the work, join communities, listen to podcasts like this, reach out to people like me and Judy and say, hey, I listened to your podcast the other day. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions or share this with you or whatever? And then you just move from meeting one person to the next. And I met Judy through Dr. Gail Brenner. I met Dr. Gail Brenner through Michelle on the Needy Helper Forum. Michelle also introduced me to Justice Schamfarberger, who we interviewed, and it just goes on and on and on.
How did you meet Jamie?
Jamie Smart? Okay. I was at my friend's house for Christmas dinner. Two people who are on my wavelength, and we had Secret Santa, and one of them bought me Results by Jamie Smart.
Great.
And I read it, and it had a really good, profound effect on my thinking, more so than clarity. I joined his Facebook group, and then I went to a forum of his in London and did some one-to-one coaching up on stage around, I tell you what it was my inability to turn what I'm doing into a business. I felt ashamed of charging people money to help them. And what I learned, Judy, was I didn't feel confident enough that my hypotheses about how I quit drinking, that I could produce results. And that lack of belief in myself was making me feel like I was a fraud, which meant that I wasn't able to have confident conversations with people. And I left there and I started doing work with people for free to kind of practice what I'm doing. And the feedback that I'm getting is excellent. It's creating confidence within me that I can make a difference and do things. And on the money side of it, it doesn't really matter. We can always figure out ways of doing it. So that's how I met Jamie. And he was on the podcast, actually.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Fantastic.
Can I, have you got time for me to ask you? I know we're coming up to the hour. Have you got time?
Sure.
Okay. I want to go back to when I said that I was feeling ashamed of my ex-wife and I was causing her problems. And what would life be like if I was back there now thinking the way I'm thinking now? How would I have dealt with that? And you said something along the lines of, we start to feel different, and we start to kind of, I guess you were trying to say, just stop me if I'm wrong, we start to understand what we want, what we don't want. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't like her drinking, I used to want to, if she was going out on a Saturday night, Judy, I used to say to her, don't come home. Go to your mum's house. Or I would want to leave. But it's really difficult when you've got a kid.
Yes.
Because you don't want to leave your kid in the hands of somebody who's drunk.
That's right.
The other thing that I found really difficult was I didn't want to leave her on her own when she was drunk. Sure. So there were times when I was with her where she nearly choked on a piece of chicken. There was another time when she tried to make fried eggs and nearly burnt the house down. And I just had these visions. If I leave and say to her, I'm going to go out, you go out and do what you want, I would come home and she would have killed herself, or the house would have been burnt down or something. So I always felt stuck no matter what I could do. And I felt helpless because I felt stuck, i.e. I couldn't just get out of that space when she was at a drink. I then couldn't tolerate being around her when she was there. I tried everything. I tried to be nice. I tried what, it didn't matter. We would just always end up banging heads. And I guess when you say that we start to realize what we want, I couldn't see it, but I guess it started to become obvious to me that I didn't want that relationship.
Right.
Well, and you must see that all the time, right?
Yeah. And when I say what you want, I think that goes back to clarity.
Uh-huh.
And the only way that you can really get in touch with your clarity is if there's less thinking on your mind. So we never know what our clarity will show us about a situation until we arrive at that place of clarity. And oftentimes it comes up with things that we would have never thought of before. So again, it all goes back to, can I see where am I thinking, what's causing my experience in this moment? Can I stop and see that, there's thought here? And allow that to calm in some way. And usually the way people do that is by they can change the focus of their attention. They can say, I'm not going to follow that thought. And I'm just going to let my mind settle here. And from there, answers can come and do come. So I could never say to somebody, you should have done this. Because I don't know what their own natural wisdom would come up with.
Right.
I mean, this is a totally different way of working. Because I can't tell someone, okay, you need to do this. How would I do that? Because they're there in that situation. They have their own experience. They have their own wisdom. I can't really tell them what to do, but I can point them towards this understanding and what actually will naturally happen for them as they see this more and more. And that's why it's so different from the way that psychology has approached working with people. It's mostly been about advice giving. It doesn't really work. I've never given anybody, I mean, I've given a lot of advice in my life, when I was working in a more traditional way. People would hear it. They go, yeah, that's a great idea. Did they do it? Not necessarily.
And how's it been working for you, the new non-traditional way?
Pretty amazing, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't, see, the other thing is that it doesn't happen. It doesn't, the understanding grows in each person at a different pace. And I think that's really important to remember, because a lot of people, it's like they get an understanding, they get an insight, and then they think that, oh, now it's all clear. I'm going to have, I'm just going to go forward and have clarity all the time. That isn't the way it works.
No, because you yourself are saying you dip in and out. Jamie Smart always says, I dip in and out,
I've heard some teachers of the three principles that have been around from the beginning with Sid Banks. I've heard them say, I go in and out 50 times a day. So we're just not used, it's that same thing. We're used to thinking in a linear fashion. It's like, okay, if I get this, then I got it, right? And it's just going to be a straight line. It's not a straight line.
It's really interesting because my mantra for so long was always stop drinking, start thinking, because you only get one life. Because when I quit drinking, suddenly I just started thinking about life more and philosophizing and seeing things. And what you're saying is, it probably wasn't thinking, it was just me getting back to the essence of who I am.
Yeah.
And I guess my greatest work, my greatest insights are when I'm in that space. Probably the moment I gave up drinking after reading Alan Carr's Easy the Way to Control Alcohol, I probably was in that space. I just didn't even recognize I was in there, and therefore I came away thinking it was a methodology. So, really
yeah, that's it. Yeah, because it's always there. I think that's one of the big challenges too, is trusting that it's always there. At least it has been for me. Yep.
Yeah, for me, it's I just find it really, really difficult to just let go of the need to always be right.
Yeah.
I find it so hard. I will have conversations in my mind. Liza, my dear wife, she'll say something. In my head, I'll say this to her. And then in my head, I'll say, no, don't do that, because it'll end up in a fight. And then I'll just say it anyway. And then I'll say, what did I say that for? And then I'll apologize straight away. Before, I'm just like, I'm sorry I just said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I'm going mental, honestly.
Yeah. So my version of that is I have a very judgmental mind, right? So I just judge everything. I judge everybody. It just goes on and on and on and on. And And for years, this is one of the things that's happened for me actually with the 3 principles understanding. For years, I felt so bad about it, about that, all that judgment, you know? Well, when I started to see that I wasn't choosing those thoughts were just coming through my mind. I have no idea why. I felt so relieved because it took all that self-judgment off. And so now it's like, oh yeah, there's that thought. I don't have to go there.
Yeah.
I don't even have to entertain that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, I'm a much happier camper.
Yeah, you look it.
Yeah.
Judy, I'm going to have to let you go. I will put links to all your website.
Great.
You've got a lot of YouTube videos up there. I know you do a lot of one-to-one work. I'll make sure that those are all put in the show notes. But if you do want to, if you're not going to go to the show notes and you do want to contact Judy, then it's JAVORUZ at wisecaring.com. That is JAVORUZ at wisecaring.com. And Judy is one of these super cool cats who even puts her phone number down and says, ring me up if you've got a problem.
That's right.
Yeah. That is someone who's definitely got clarity, you know. So we'll put.
Great. It was wonderful talking to you.
Oh, I loved it, Judy.
Yeah.
And we'll keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Take care.